The first time my wife threw me under the bus, I was wearing a $2,000 suit and holding a congratulations card I'd bought for her promotion. "Excuse me, intern," Gavin Price barked across the gleaming lobby of Laura's new Houston tech office. "Take this upstairs to accounting." He shoved a manila folder at my chest without looking up from his phone. I stood there, stunned, watching my wife of 12 years laugh along with her new boss. Not a nervous laugh. Not an embarrassed, "Oh, that's actually my husband" laugh. A genuine, delighted giggle that said she found the whole thing hilarious. "Actually," I said, straightening my tie, "I'm Wes Farrow, Laura's husband." Gavin's silver fox smirk faltered for exactly half a second. "Right. Well." He didn't apologize. Neither did Laura. The thing about being underestimated your whole life is that you develop a certain radar for disrespect. And right now, mine was screaming like a smoke detector with fresh batteries. "Wes just has one of those faces," Laura said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she used when she was embarrassed. "You know, approachable, like support staff." I smiled and nodded, playing the good husband while my internal narrator started sharpening knives. Support staff. Right. The kind of support staff who could buy this entire building with their lunch money. The grand opening party swirled around us, champagne glasses, networking chatter, and the kind of corporate backslapping that makes my skin crawl. Laura had worked for months to land this regional manager position, and I'd been genuinely proud of her. Past tense being the operative phrase. "Mira, come meet my husband," Laura called to a brunette in an expensive dress who was clearly trying too hard to look important. Mira, Laura's cousin and self-appointed workwife, gave me the kind of handshake you'd give a particularly unimpressive houseplant. "Oh, you're the one who works from home," she said, like I'd just admitted to collecting unemployment. "I run a consulting firm," I said. "How nice," Mira replied, already looking past me toward more important people. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie and wondering when exactly my marriage had turned into a performance art piece about humiliation. The bathroom door opened and two women from Laura's department walked in, chatting loudly. "Did you see Laura's husband?" one of them said. "I thought he was the caterer." "Poor guy. She's way out of his league now, especially with all those late nights she's been pulling with Gavin." They giggled and left. I stayed in that bathroom for another 5 minutes, staring at my reflection and feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. When I returned to the party, I found Laura and Gavin huddled near the bar, their heads close together in the kind of intimate conversation that makes wives nervous and husbands homicidal. Not that I was planning anything homicidal. I'm more of a chess player than a checkers guy. "There's my better half," Laura said when she spotted me, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Gavin was just telling me about the executive retreat next month." "Sounds exciting," I said. "Team building exercises, trust falls, that sort of thing." Gavin laughed like I'd made a joke instead of stating facts. "Something like that. Though I suspect the real bonding happens after hours, if you know what I mean." He winked at Laura. She blushed. I went home that night and sat in my study, staring at my computer screen and thinking about trust falls. About how the whole concept relies on someone being there to catch you when you let yourself be vulnerable. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thought you should see these. Attached were screenshots of email exchanges between Laura and Gavin. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but plenty of flirty undertones and references to private meetings and special projects. The final attachment was a hotel receipt. L&G, champagne suite, executive package. I set the phone down and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. Then I opened my laptop and started making some calls. Jaden Mitchell, my old college roommate, answered on the second ring. "Wes, it's midnight, man. This better be good. How would you feel about helping me buy a company?" "Which company?" I told him. "Jesus, Wes. That's going to cost serious money. I've got serious money. There was a pause. How serious are we talking? Serious enough to make some people very uncomfortable. Jaden laughed, and I could hear him sitting up in bed. Now you've got my attention. What's the play? Revenge, I said. The kind that doesn't involve lawyers or prison time. Just good old-fashioned public humiliation. I'm listening. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I spent the next hour outlining my plan while Laura slept peacefully upstairs, probably dreaming about champagne suites and silver foxes. When I finally hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: anticipation. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the parking lot of a private ranch outside Houston, watching my wife flirt with her boss while pretending to be a management consultant named Wesley Franklin. The beauty of being consistently underestimated is that people don't really look at you. They see what they expect to see. In my case, a generic middle-aged guy in khakis and a polo shirt who probably sells insurance or fixes computers. Team-building exercises, I muttered, watching Gavin help Laura out of his Mercedes like she was some kind of delicate flower instead of a woman who once changed her own tire in a thunderstorm. This should be educational. The ranch was all rustic charm and corporate excess, hay bales arranged around fire pits, a catered barbecue that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and enough beer to float a small yacht. Laura's entire department had made the trip, plus various executives and their plus ones. I'd managed to get myself invited by claiming to be a consultant specializing in team dynamics. Amazing what a fake business card and a confident phone call can accomplish. Wesley Franklin, I said, introducing myself to the retreat coordinator. I'm here to observe group interactions. Purely academic, of course. She handed me a name tag and pointed me toward the registration table. Just try to blend in. We want authentic behavior, not performance. Authentic behavior. Right. I clipped the name tag to my shirt and wandered toward the main group, where Gavin was holding court like some kind of corporate cowboy. The key to success, he was saying, gesturing with a beer bottle, is knowing when to take risks and when to play it safe. Some people never learn that lesson. His eyes found mine across the circle, and for a moment I thought he'd recognized me. But his gaze slid past without interest, dismissing me as just another corporate drone. Laura was hanging on his every word, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, and touching his arm with the casual intimacy of someone who'd clearly been doing it for a while. Mira stood beside her like a loyal wingman, occasionally shooting disapproving looks at Gavin's wife, who was chatting with other spouses near the food table. "Trust exercise time," the coordinator announced. "Everyone pair up with someone you don't know well." I found myself partnered with a nervous accountant named Dave, who spent the next 20 minutes telling me about his model train collection, while we stumbled through various team-building activities. Meanwhile, I kept one eye on Laura and Gavin, who had somehow ended up as partners, despite clearly knowing each other very well. "Your wife seems nice," Dave said during a break, nodding toward Gavin's actual wife. "Oh, she's not my wife," I said. "I'm just here to observe." "Right. The consultant thing. Must be interesting watching people when they don't know they're being watched." You have no idea, I thought. The afternoon's main event was something called Truth or Trust, which involved participants sharing personal stories while blindfolded partners guided them through an obstacle course. It was exactly as ridiculous as it sounds, but it gave me a perfect opportunity to eavesdrop on conversations. "I can't believe you convinced your husband to let you come alone," I heard Mira say to Lara as they prepared for their turn. "Wes doesn't really care what I do anymore," Lara replied. "He's too busy with his little computer projects to notice if I'm gone for a weekend." Still, some men would be suspicious. All these late nights, The travel? Wes isn't the suspicious type. He's more like a golden retriever, loyal, predictable, and not particularly bright about reading social cues. They laughed, and I felt that cold calculation in my chest grow a few degrees colder. The sun was setting when things got really interesting. Most of the group had gathered around the main fire pit, but Lara and Gavin had wandered off toward a smaller seating area near the barn. I followed at a discreet distance, using my consultant cover to justify my interest in observing interpersonal dynamics. This whole thing was brilliant, Lara was saying, getting the company to pay for a romantic weekend. The retreat was legitimate, Gavin replied. The fact that we're using it for other purposes is just efficient resource management. Speaking of resources, when do you think the promotion will go through? Soon. I've got the board meeting next month, and with the numbers your department has been putting up, it should be a formality. Regional manager to VP is a big jump, but you've earned it. We've earned it, Lara corrected. This partnership has been good for both of us. Partnership, Gavin repeated, and even from 50 feet away, I could hear the amusement in his voice. Is that what we're calling it? They moved closer together, and I decided I'd seen enough. I had confirmation of what I'd suspected. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-scale conspiracy involving company resources and career advancement. The kind of thing that would look very bad in the wrong hands, or the right hands, depending on your perspective. I was heading back toward the main group when my phone rang. Jaden's name appeared on the screen. How's the corporate retreat? He asked. Educational. Please tell me you have good news. The best. We now own controlling interest in Price Industries. Congratulations, you're about to become the majority shareholder of your wife's company. I stopped walking. How controlling are we talking? 51%. Enough to make some serious changes if you want to. The previous owner was looking to retire, and our offer was too good to refuse. Cash talks, especially when there's a lot of it. What about the current management structure? Intact for now, but as majority owner, you'll have the authority to make executive decisions, including personnel changes. I looked back toward the barn, where Lara and Gavin were still playing their little game of corporate romance. Jaden, I think it's time we scheduled a board meeting. When? Soon. Very soon. I hung up and walked back to the fire pit, where someone had broken out a guitar and people were singing corporate campfire songs. Lara was sitting next to Gavin, their knees touching, both of them looking relaxed and happy. Enjoy it while it lasts, I thought. Break time is almost over. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you believe in fresh starts and new possibilities. I was sitting in my home office at 6 a.m. drinking coffee and watching the sunrise paint Houston's skyline gold and orange. My phone buzzed with a text from Lara. Early meeting today. Won't be home until late. Don't wait up. I'll try to contain my disappointment, I typed back, then deleted it and sent no problem instead. No point in tipping my hand before the cards were on the table. At 8 sharp, I walked into the offices of Price Industries, wearing my best suit and carrying a leather briefcase that contained exactly 3 things: my identification, a copy of the ownership transfer documents, and a bottle of antacid, because even the best-laid revenge plans can give you heartburn. The receptionist, a young woman named Ashley, who'd been polite but dismissive at the company party, looked up with the kind of professional smile reserved for people who might be important, but probably weren't. Can I help you? Wes Farrow to see Ed Morrison, I said. Ed was the head of security, a former Houston police detective who'd taken early retirement and parlayed his law enforcement experience into corporate security work. We'd had a brief but interesting conversation at Lara's promotion party. Is he expecting you? He should be. Ashley made a phone call, spoke in hushed tones, then looked up with surprise. He'll be right down. Ed appeared 5 minutes later, looking exactly like what you'd expect from an ex-cop turned security chief. Gray hair, suspicious eyes, and the kind of handshake that could crack walnuts. Mr. Farrow, this is unexpected. I imagine it is. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? He led me to a small conference room near the security office. I opened my briefcase and slid the ownership documents across the table. Ed read them twice, then looked up at me with something that might have been respect. Well, I'll be damned. You're the new owner. Majority owner, I corrected, which means I'm technically your boss now. I guess that changes things. It changes everything. How well do you know Gavin Price? Ed's expression didn't change, but I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Well enough? And Lara Farrow? Your wife. He paused. Yes, I know her too. In your professional opinion, how would you rate their adherence to company policies regarding appropriate workplace behavior? Ed leaned back in his chair and studied me for a long moment. Are we talking hypothetically, or are you asking for an official assessment? Let's call it due diligence. I'm new to the ownership role, and I want to understand the corporate culture. The corporate culture, Ed repeated slowly, includes a certain amount of after-hours socializing between management personnel. Some might call it networking. Others might have different terms for it. I see. And company resources? Are they being used appropriately? That would depend on how you define appropriate. Executive retreats, business dinners, travel expenses, all technically legitimate if properly documented. But not all of it is properly documented. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Ed smiled for the first time since I'd walked in. I think I'm going to like working for you, Mr. Farrow. Call me Wes, and I'm going to need a complete audit of all executive expenses for the past 6 months. Can you handle that discreetly? Discretion is part of the service. Good. One more thing. I'll need access to the building's security system, all of it. That's highly irregular. I'm a highly irregular owner. Ed stood up and extended his hand again. Welcome to Price Industries, boss. My next stop was the IT department, where I found a young programmer named Kevin, who looked like he'd been living on energy drinks and pizza for the past month. His desk was covered with empty cans and crumpled food wrappers, and his monitor displayed what appeared to be 17 different programming windows. Kevin Martinez, I said. He looked up with the startled expression of someone who'd been caught doing something they shouldn't. Yes? Are you from HR? Because I can explain about the overtime. I'm Wes Farrow, new owner. I need to talk to you about email systems. Kevin's eyes went wide. Owner, like owner. Majority shareholder, which makes me your ultimate boss. How comfortable are you with email system administration? Very comfortable. It's kind of my specialty. Good. I need you to set up monitoring protocols for specific accounts. Executive level. Can you do that without anyone knowing? Kevin glanced around the empty IT department, then leaned forward conspiratorially. Technically, yes, but that's a pretty serious privacy violation. I could lose my job. Kevin, I own the company. You work for me now. The only way you lose your job is if you don't do what I'm asking. He thought about that for a moment. When do you need it done? Yesterday would be good. This morning will have to do. I'll need administrator access to the email servers. Done. What else? About an hour of uninterrupted time and a really strong cup of coffee. I handed him my business card. My personal number is on there. Text me when it's finished. What exactly are we looking for? Evidence of inappropriate use of company resources, communications that might violate company policy, the usual corporate malfeasance. Kevin nodded like he'd been waiting his whole career for this conversation. I can work with that. My phone was buzzing with text messages by the time I left the building. 3 from Lara, 2 from Mira, and 1 from Gavin himself. All variations on the same theme. Where are you? We need to talk. I ignored them all and drove to Jaden's office downtown. He was waiting with a pot of coffee and a stack of financial documents that looked thick enough to stop bullets. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected. Security and IT are on board. What about the financial side? Clean as a whistle on our end. The ownership transfer is completely legal and properly documented. Price Industries is now officially under new management, even if the old management doesn't know it yet. When will they find out? That depends on how you want to play it. We could call a board meeting, make it official and public. Or we could keep operating behind the scenes until you're ready to make your move. I thought about Laura and Gavin, probably sitting in some conference room right now, planning their next romantic getaway on company money. Let's keep it quiet for now. I want to gather more evidence before we go public. Evidence of what, exactly? Misuse of company funds, inappropriate workplace relationships, maybe some light embezzlement if we're lucky. Jaden raised an eyebrow. You're really going for the throat on this one. They threw the first punch. I'm just responding in kind. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin. Email monitoring active. You're going to want to see this stuff. I showed the message to Jaden. Looks like the evidence is already starting to pile up. What's the end game here, Wes? Public humiliation? Financial ruin? Both? Justice, I said, the kind that leaves a mark. We spent the next hour going over the financial details of the acquisition. Price Industries was actually a solid company with good cash flow and decent prospects. Under different circumstances, it might have been a smart investment. Under these circumstances, it was the perfect weapon. My phone rang as I was leaving Jaden's office. Lara's name appeared on the screen. Where have you been? She demanded. I've been trying to reach you all day. Business meetings, you know how it is. What kind of business meetings? The boring kind, contracts and financial projections. Nothing that would interest you. There was a pause. Gavin wants to meet with you. About what? I don't know. He just said it was important. Can you come to the office? I checked my watch. 3 p.m. Perfect timing. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Good. And Wes? Try to make a good impression. This could be important for both of us. You have no idea how important, I thought. But you're about to find out. The Price Industries lobby felt different when you owned it. The marble floors seemed shinier, the corporate artwork more pretentious, and the receptionist's smile significantly more deferential once she realized who I was. Mr. Farrow, Ashley said, her voice carrying a new note of respect. Mr. Price is waiting for you in his office. Actually, I said, I think we'll meet in the main conference room. Could you let him know? Of course, sir. Sir. I could get used to that. Gavin appeared 5 minutes later, looking slightly confused but maintaining his usual executive swagger. He was the kind of man who wore expensive suits like armor and treated every conversation like a hostile negotiation. Wes, he said, extending a hand. Thanks for coming in. I know you're a busy man. Not too busy for family, I replied, matching his firm handshake. Laura mentioned you wanted to discuss something important. Right. Let's sit down. The conference room overlooked downtown Houston through floor-to-ceiling windows that probably cost more than most people's cars. Gavin took the head of the table out of habit. I sat across from him and waited. I'll cut to the chase, Gavin said. There have been some changes in the company structure recently. New investors, ownership transfers, that sort of thing. As Lara's husband, I wanted to make sure you understood how these changes might affect her position. What kind of changes? Nothing dramatic. Just some financial restructuring. The important thing is that Lara's job is secure and her promotion track is still on schedule. I nodded thoughtfully. That's reassuring. Who are these new investors? Anonymous group. Very professional, very discreet. The kind of people who prefer to stay in the background while the current management team continues to run day-to-day operations. Smart approach. No point in fixing something that isn't broken. Exactly. Gavin leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. The thing is, Wes, some of these new ownership groups can be very particular about employee conduct, personal relationships, expense reports, that sort of thing. I want to make sure Lara doesn't get caught up in any unnecessary scrutiny. What kind of scrutiny? background checks, lifestyle audits. They sometimes look into employees' personal lives to make sure there aren't any potential conflicts of interest. I felt a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Conflicts of interest? You know how it is. Office relationships, after-hours socializing, business travel with colleagues, all perfectly innocent, but sometimes these corporate types can be old-fashioned about appearances. I appreciate you looking out for Lara's interests, I said. It shows real leadership. Gavin relaxed slightly. She's a valuable employee. We want to keep her happy. I'm sure you do. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and felt my smile widen. Kevin had been busy. Actually, Gavin, since we're talking about company policies and employee conduct, I have something I'd like to show you. I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room's presentation system. The wall-mounted monitor flickered to life, displaying Kevin's email monitoring dashboard. What is this? Gavin asked. Employee communications audit, I said, clicking through to a folder labeled Executive Correspondence. Just a random sampling of recent email traffic. The first message appeared on screen, from Gavin to Lara, sent 3 days ago. Looking forward to our private meeting tonight. I've booked the usual room. Gavin's face went pale. Where did you get this? Company email system. Technically, all employee communications belong to the company. I clicked to the next message. This one's interesting too. Lara's response, can't wait. Make sure you expense it to the client development budget like last time. This is a violation of privacy, Gavin said, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, it's a violation of company policy. Misuse of corporate resources, inappropriate workplace relationships, potential embezzlement. I clicked through several more messages, each one more damaging than the last. Should I continue, or have you seen enough? Gavin stood up abruptly. What do you want? I want you to sit down and listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. He sat. My name is Wes Farrow, and as of yesterday morning I am the majority owner of Price Industries. That makes me your boss, Gavin. It also makes me Lara's boss, and right now, both of you are in serious trouble. The color drained from Gavin's face completely. That's impossible. I have the paperwork if you'd like to see it. Properly notarized, filed with the state, completely legal and binding. You can't afford to buy this company. Apparently I can. Funny how people never really know their neighbors, isn't it? I clicked to another folder on the screen. Kevin in IT has been very helpful. Did you know that executive expense reports are stored on the same server as email? Amazing what you can find when you actually look. The screen filled with a spreadsheet showing months of questionable charges. Hotel rooms, restaurant bills, travel expenses, all charged to various company accounts, all coinciding with Lara and Gavin's documented meetings. This is entrapment, Gavin said weakly. This is evidence of systematic misuse of company funds, violation of workplace conduct policies, and what appears to be a coordinated effort to defraud the company. I closed the laptop. The question now is what we do about it. What do you want? I want you to call Lara up here, right now. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think you understand the situation, Gavin. You work for me now. When I give you an instruction, you follow it. He reached for his phone with shaking hands. Lara arrived 10 minutes later, looking annoyed and slightly out of breath. She stopped short when she saw me sitting at the conference table. Wes? What are you doing here? Having a business meeting with my employee, I said. Please, sit down. Your employee? Gavin didn't tell you? I own the company now, majority shareholder as of yesterday. Lara looked back and forth between us, confusion and growing panic warring on her face. That's not possible. Seems to be the consensus. Unfortunately for both of you, it's also completely true. I reopened the laptop and clicked through the evidence again. Lara's expression changed from confusion to horror as she realized what she was looking at. "You've been spying on us." "I've been conducting a routine audit of company communications. What I found was a pattern of systematic misconduct by 2 senior employees." "This is harassment," Lara said, but her voice was shaking. "This is accountability, something both of you seem to have forgotten about." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Houston skyline. "Here's what's going to happen. Gavin, you're going to submit your resignation effective immediately. Lara, you're going to be transferred to a different department with a significant reduction in responsibilities and salary." "You can't do this," Gavin said. "I can do whatever I want. I own the company." "I'll sue you for wrongful termination." "With what evidence?" "Everything on that screen is documented company property, obtained through legal channels by authorized personnel." I turned back to face them. "Besides, I'm not terminating you, Gavin. I'm giving you the opportunity to resign with dignity. The alternative is public termination for cause, which would make it very difficult to find another executive position." Lara was staring at the floor, her hands clenched in her lap. "How long have you known?" "About the affair?" "Weeks. About the embezzlement? Since this morning." "It wasn't embezzlement. Those were legitimate business expenses." "Hotel rooms for personal meetings aren't business expenses, Lara. They're theft." The room fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. Finally, Gavin spoke up. "What if we agree to end the personal relationship? Keep everything strictly professional going forward?" "Too late for that," I said. "The trust is broken. The evidence is documented. The only question now is whether you leave quietly or whether this becomes a public spectacle." "A public spectacle?" I smiled. "Kevin's email monitoring system can be configured to send reports to any recipient I choose. The entire staff, the board of directors, your wife, Gavin, the possibilities are endless." "You wouldn't." "Try me." Gavin looked at Lara, then back at me. "I need time to think about this. You have until tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Either I have your resignation letter, or I start forwarding emails." I packed up my laptop and headed for the door. "Oh, and one more thing. Effective immediately, both of your corporate credit cards are canceled. Any future expenses will need to be pre-approved by me personally." I left them sitting in the conference room, staring at each other across the table where they'd probably planned their next romantic getaway just hours earlier. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like a victory lap. The next morning arrived with the kind of gray, drizzling rain that makes Houston feel like a different city entirely. I was in my home office by 6 a.m., coffee in hand, watching the email monitoring dashboard light up like a Christmas tree. Gavin and Lara had been busy overnight, frantic phone calls, desperate text messages, and a flurry of emails to various contacts, all of it flowing through company servers, all of it documented and stored for my review. My favorite was Lara's message to Mira at 2:47 a.m. "Emergency. Need to talk. Wes knows everything. What do we do?" Mira's response came an hour later. "How much does he know? Can we contain this? He owns the company. He has all our emails. We're screwed. There has to be something we can do, some way to fight this." "Like what?" "He has evidence of everything. The hotels, the expenses, all of it." "What about the harassment angle? Inappropriate surveillance, invasion of privacy? With what lawyer? On what money?" "He canceled our credit cards." I was still reading through the overnight drama when my phone rang. Jaden's name appeared on the screen. "Morning, sunshine," he said. "How's the corporate takeover business treating you?" "Better than expected. They're panicking." "Good. Panic leads to mistakes, and mistakes lead to more evidence. Speaking of evidence, I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "Call a board meeting for this afternoon. All board members, mandatory attendance. I want to make my ownership official and introduce some new policies." "What kind of policies?" "The kind that make it very clear what happens to employees who steal from the company." "I'll make the calls. What about Gavin and Lara?" "They'll be there, whether they want to be or not." I hung up and returned to the email dashboard. Kevin had outdone himself. The monitoring system was capturing everything, organizing it by sender, recipient, and keyword. I had folders for financial misconduct, personal relationships, and damage control attempts. The damage control folder was growing by the hour. At 8:30, my phone rang. Gavin's name on the caller ID. "Good morning, Gavin. I trust you've made your decision? We need to meet, in person. Just the three of us." "The three of us?" "You, me, and Laura. We have a proposal." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Too risky. Can you come to the office?" I checked my watch. "I'll be there in an hour. Conference room B." "Actually, could we meet somewhere more private? My office?" "Conference room B, Gavin, with the door open and the recording system active. I want everything documented." There was a pause. "Recording system?" "New policy. All executive meetings are now recorded for quality assurance purposes." "That's highly unusual." "I'm a highly unusual owner." I arrived at Price Industries to find the parking lot buzzing with more activity than usual. Word was spreading through the company that changes were coming, and people were nervous. Ashley, the receptionist, practically jumped out of her chair when I walked in. "Good morning, Mr. Farrow. Mr. Price and Mrs. Farrow are waiting for you in conference room B." "Thank you, Ashley." "Oh, and please send a company-wide email about the board meeting this afternoon. All employees are invited to attend." "All employees, sir?" "Every single one. This should be educational for everyone." I found Gavin and Lara sitting at opposite ends of the conference table, both looking like they hadn't slept in days. Lara's usual polished appearance was showing cracks, wrinkled clothes, smudged makeup, and the kind of desperate expression that comes from realizing your world is falling apart. "Thank you both for coming," I said, taking a seat at the head of the table. "I understand you have a proposal?" Gavin cleared his throat. "We've been thinking about your ultimatum yesterday, and we believe there might be a mutually beneficial solution." "I'm listening." "What if we could make the financial irregularities go away? Full restitution plus interest plus a penalty fee." "How much are we talking about?" Lara spoke up for the first time. "We've calculated approximately $47,000 in questionable expenses over the past 8 months. "Questionable?" "Inappropriate," Gavin corrected quickly. "Definitely inappropriate. We're prepared to pay it back immediately." "With what money?" They exchanged glances. "Personal funds," Lara said. "Savings, retirement accounts, whatever it takes." "And in exchange?" "We keep our jobs. Clean slate, fresh start, no more personal relationship." I leaned back in my chair and pretended to consider their offer. "That's an interesting proposal. There's just one problem." "What's that?" "I don't want your money, Gavin. I want your resignation. But if we pay back the money, you still stole it in the first place. You still violated company policy. You still betrayed the trust of every employee in this building." "Everyone makes mistakes," Lara said desperately. "People deserve second chances." "Some people do," I agreed. "But not people who throw their husbands under the bus at company parties. Not people who steal from their employers to fund their affairs. Not people who laugh about it with their friends." Lara's face crumpled. "I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far. And now you have to live with the consequences." I stood up and walked to the whiteboard, picking up a marker and drawing a simple organizational chart. "Here's how things are going to work from now on. I'm at the top. Below me is a new management structure with people I trust. Neither of you are in that structure." "You're destroying our careers over a personal vendetta," Gavin said. "I'm holding you accountable for your actions. There's a difference." "What about Lara? She's your wife." "She was my wife. Now she's just another employee who violated company policy." The room fell silent. Finally, Lara spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want from us, Wes?" I want you to understand what it feels like to be humiliated in front of people you thought respected you. I want you to know what it's like to have your trust betrayed by someone you loved. I want you to experience the consequences of your choices. And then you can start over somewhere else, with someone else's company and someone else's money. I capped the marker and set it down. The board meeting starts in 4 hours. I suggest you both prepare your remarks carefully. What kind of remarks? The kind that explain to your colleagues why you're no longer going to be working here. I left them in the conference room and walked down to Kevin's desk in IT. He looked up with the eager expression of someone who'd been waiting for this moment all week. "How's our email monitoring system working out?" I asked. "Like a dream. I've got everything organized and ready for presentation, charts, graphs, timeline analysis, the whole package." "Perfect. Can you have it ready for the board meeting this afternoon?" "Already done. I took the liberty of creating a multimedia presentation. Very professional, very thorough." "Kevin, you're getting a promotion." "Really?" "Really. How does Director of Information Security sound?" His face lit up. "It sounds like the best job title I've ever heard." "Good. Your first assignment in your new role is to make sure every employee in the building sees that presentation this afternoon." "Every employee?" "Every single one. I want complete transparency about what happens to people who steal from this company." I spent the next few hours in my temporary office, reviewing the financial documents Jaden had prepared and practicing my remarks for the board meeting. At 2 p.m., I walked into the main conference room to find it packed with employees, board members, and a few people I didn't recognize who were probably lawyers. Gavin and Laura sat in the front row, both looking like they were attending their own funeral. Mira was beside Laura, whispering urgently in her ear. I took my place at the podium and looked out at the assembled crowd. "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to what I believe will be a very important meeting in the history of Price Industries." The room was completely silent. As most of you know by now, there have been some changes in the company's ownership structure. I'm here today to introduce myself as your new majority shareholder and to outline some new policies regarding employee conduct and corporate accountability. I clicked to the first slide of Kevin's presentation. Let's start with a case study in what not to do. The next hour was everything I'd hoped it would be, and more. The presentation ended to complete silence. 43 employees, 7 board members, and 2 lawyers staring at a screen that had just displayed months of documented evidence showing systematic theft, policy violations, and what could only be described as breathtaking arrogance. Gavin sat frozen in his chair, his face the color of old concrete. Laura was crying quietly, her mascara creating dark tracks down her cheeks. Mira looked like she was calculating the distance to the nearest exit. "Are there any questions?" I asked the room. A hand went up in the back. Janet from accounting, a woman who'd been with the company for 15 years and had the kind of institutional knowledge that made her invaluable. "What happens now?" she asked. "Excellent question, Janet. What happens now is that we rebuild this company's culture from the ground up. We establish clear policies, transparent procedures, and absolute accountability for everyone from the newest intern to the senior executives." Another hand, Dave from IT, Kevin's supervisor. "What about the people involved in this?" He gestured toward the screen. "Another excellent question. Mr. Price, would you like to address that?" Gavin stood up slowly, his hands shaking. I want to apologize to everyone in this room. My actions were inappropriate and inexcusable. I've betrayed your trust and damaged this company's reputation." "And?" I prompted. "And I'm submitting my resignation, effective immediately." A murmur ran through the crowd. Several people were openly staring at Laura, waiting for her response. "Mrs. Farrow," I said, "do you have anything to add?" Laura stood up, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm so sorry to all of you. I know that's not enough, but it's all I have. Are you resigning as well? She looked at me with something that might have been hope. Are you giving me that option? I'm giving you the same option I gave Mr. Price. Resign with dignity or be terminated for cause. I resign. The murmur in the room grew louder. People were whispering, checking their phones, processing what they'd just witnessed. Thank you both, I said. Security will escort you out after the meeting. Please clean out your offices and surrender all company property, including credit cards, access badges, and any confidential information. Ed Morrison, the security chief, nodded from his position near the door. Now then, I continued, let's talk about the future. This company has excellent employees, solid financials, and tremendous potential. What it hasn't had is leadership that puts the company's interests first. That changes today. I clicked to a new slide showing the organizational chart I'd drawn earlier. I'm promoting several people to new positions, effective immediately. Kevin Martinez is our new Director of Information Security. Janet Williams is our new Chief Financial Officer. Dave Chen is our new Director of Operations. The three of them looked shocked. Janet actually gasped. These promotions come with significant salary increases and expanded responsibilities. They also come with the expectation that you'll help me build a company culture based on integrity, transparency, and mutual respect. I clicked to the final slide. Questions? This time, dozens of hands went up. The next hour was a mix of practical questions about the transition, policy clarifications, and what I can only describe as therapeutic venting from employees who'd been watching the Gavin and Lara show for months without being able to do anything about it. When the meeting finally ended, I found myself surrounded by people wanting to shake hands, express support, or just thank me for finally addressing what everyone had known, but nobody had been willing to confront. Gavin and Lara were escorted out by Ed and 2 security guards. I watched through the conference room windows as they walked across the parking lot, carrying cardboard boxes containing the remnants of their corporate careers. Mira tried to slip out with the crowd, but I caught her at the elevator. Ms. Rodriguez, I said. A word? She turned around with the expression of someone who'd been caught shoplifting. Yes, Mr. Farrow? I'm curious about your role in all of this. The emails suggest you were more than just a passive observer. I never stole anything. No, but you helped cover it up. You provided alibis, falsified expense reports, and actively participated in defrauding the company. I was just being loyal to my cousin. Loyalty is admirable. Complicity in theft is not. She stared at the floor. What do you want from me? The same thing I wanted from them, your resignation. And if I refuse? Then you'll be terminated for cause, which will make it very difficult to find another HR position. Your choice. She handed me her badge without another word. By 6 p.m., the building was quiet except for the cleaning crew and a few dedicated employees working late. I was in my new office, formerly Gavin's office, reviewing the day's events when Kevin knocked on the door. Come in, I called. He entered carrying a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. I thought we should celebrate. Celebrate what? Justice, accountability, the fact that the good guys won for once. I accepted a glass and raised it in a toast. To new beginnings. To new beginnings. We drank, and Kevin settled into one of the chairs across from my desk. So what happens now? I mean, long term? Now we run a company. Properly this time. What about Lara? I mean, she's still your wife, technically. Technically, yes. But I think that situation will resolve itself soon enough. Divorce? Among other things. Kevin nodded thoughtfully. You know, I've worked for a lot of companies and I've seen a lot of executives come and go, but I've never seen anything like what you did today. What do you mean? Complete and total destruction of someone's life and career, accomplished entirely through legal means and documented evidence. It was like watching a chess grandmaster play against amateurs. They made their choices, Kevin. I just made sure there were consequences. Still, it was impressive. Terrifying, but impressive. I looked out the window at the Houston skyline, thinking about the past few weeks and how dramatically everything had changed. A month ago, I'd been the underestimated husband of an ambitious executive. Tonight, I was the owner of a multi-million-dollar company, and the people who'd betrayed me were unemployed and facing potential criminal charges. "You know what the best part is?" I said. "What's that?" They did it to themselves. Every email, every expense report, every lie and betrayal. They documented it all. I just had to connect the dots. Kevin raised his glass again. To connecting the dots. To connecting the dots. We finished our champagne in comfortable silence, two men who'd won a war without firing a shot. Outside, the sun was setting over Houston, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new responsibilities, and the complex work of rebuilding a company's culture from the ground up. But tonight, justice had been served, and that was enough. I walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot, where Lara's car had been parked every morning for the past 6 months. The space was empty now, and somehow that felt like the most satisfying sight of all. Break time was over. For all of them. For all of B.